What if I told you that the risks that you have to assess as a food delivery driver are very extensive? I'm going to go through the whole, as many as I can think of off of my own individual list right now. And so let's just hit it. Financial risk, mileage risk in this particular case. You look at that $20 order that comes in, and you get excited until you realize that it's 38 miles one direction. And then if you're in a market like mine, you got to take that 38 miles and double it because you're coming back empty. So you just spent 76 miles to get paid $20. Now, my mileage calculations, of course, are that I pay 72 cents per mile in expenses. And this, of course, includes gasoline, deferred maintenance, which is things like tire changes, rotations, oil changes, and stuff like that. And also your vehicle payments and insurance if you have vehicle payments. Obviously, that's a zero if you don't. But 72 cents per mile. So on that 38 miles, I'm doing 76 miles. My expenses are in the region of $49 to get paid that $20. I've just lost a crap ton of money on this trip. So that's mileage risk. Another thing that I recently relatively remedied for myself, this isn't a sponsorship because this channel has maybe 3 viewers per video. Someday I hope I'll have more, but drop-off risk. Now, in my case, I live in a pretty safe area of Minnesota. I live 30 miles north of the Twin Cities core urban centers. But the risk I'm talking about in this case is cell phone reception risk. Now, I used to have Verizon until last week. And the Verizon network out here is god-awful terrible in spots. You take a picture, try to send it in, it doesn't go in. You can't finish the process until you get closer to town. You get closer to town, you finish your finish the drop-off about 20 minutes after you actually dropped it off, and all of a sudden you're flagged for a TOS violation, all because your cell phone didn't work in your favor and didn't work to submit the drop-off picture at the time you actually dropped off the delivery. So I always refused all deliveries into certain areas because of this risk. This risk has largely been eliminated because I switched to T-Mobile. And T-Mobile has a far superior network in this semi-rural market of mine. I wish I had a discount code I could offer you, but I'm not at the point where I'm sponsored by anybody yet. And so I will leave it at that. So if you can eliminate that risk, by all means do. But if you can't, then you need to be judicious on what offers you accept. Do they put you in an area where a drop-off becomes complicated or difficult? Another part of drop-off risk is does the drop-off put you in a place where it's very difficult to find? Obviously, a risk of not being able to take a picture and send it in is one thing, but a risk of not being able to even find the drop-off spot is an entirely worse beast entirely. You want to be able to find the location to begin with. I had one that was very interesting. It was a concrete mixing plant just yesterday, and it said to drop off at the bottom of the stairs for the scales, truck weighing scales, by the way. And it took a little while for me to find out what those truck weighing scales were. So if you've got complex directions like that, or if you're in a location that you know has that, which I didn't, by the way, I didn't know what the setup was at this particular location. Now I know for next time that if they do ask us to drop off at the bottom of the ladder or bottom of the stairs for the weigh scales, I know exactly where I'm going. But let's say I don't know, let's say I didn't figure that out, and in the future I get this location again. I would probably refuse it if I didn't know where those weigh scales were, because then I wouldn't be able to drop off successfully. That's another risk that you gotta weigh out. Another risk that you gotta weigh out is with stacked orders. Stacked orders are an entirely different risk entirely. The risk measurement in this case is on-time metrics. I refuse almost all stacked orders with one exception. And the only stacked orders I will take is if they're both picked up at different locations but going to the same customer. Because you can explain, if you have the same customer with two orders, you can explain to them as you're going along exactly how it's working. And they will not downrate you for that because it's obvious to them what's going on. You know, if you explain to them that you're at X place, you know, if I'm at Chipotle and say that their usual 20-minute wait, you know, then you can explain that to the customer and they're going to understand. So that's a ratings risk that you don't want to have going against you. Speaking of wait times, wait time risk. You will get downrated by customers and you will miss your metrics on the apps. They measure on-time metrics, as I know both major ones up here do, DoorDash and Uber Eats. Another reason not to take certain restaurants, let alone stacked. You don't want to take certain restaurants because of the extensive wait time, which also involves your time. How much do you value your time? That's a risk that, you know, I don't like to take. There are many restaurants here which have very long wait times. Again, I'm in Forest Lake, Minnesota. We have some of the longest restaurant wait times for Dashers in the nation. I've picked this up off of Reddit groups. And according to my own tracking, average restaurant wait time in this miniature market is 12 minutes. You got to calculate that time in. How much do you value that time? If the average wait time is 12 minutes in a market, how much is your 12 minutes per trip worth to you? You know, I break even mileage-wise, the mileage risk at $1.44 per mile. But because of this wait time, I am really targeting $1.60 per mile. I've seen it on other channels, such as Ride Along with Bree, one of my new favorites. $2 per mile. A lot of times is her standard, which I may adopt at some point, given this market and its wait time challenges. And it's doesn't really have an order accuracy challenge here. Most of our orders are pretty accurate. I haven't gotten many downgrades or downvotes for inaccurate orders. In fact, DoorDash will normally send me notifications applauding the accuracy of my orders, which is a positive feature of this market. But the reason for the long wait times, of course, is many of these particular restaurants don't prioritize app deliveries. They prioritize dining room service. And the reason for this, of course, is they did not start utilizing delivery apps until the pandemic. In the pandemic, they had to have that revenue just to survive. This is no longer the case. These restaurants in particular, I know which ones I'm thinking of, have recovered their dining room service very heavily. Almost entirely. The app business is now just a bonus. It's no longer a priority. And also, in a semi-rural market such as ours, the labor market is a challenge. Everybody's always hiring up here in Forest Lake. So staffing is a problem here too, in addition to lack of prioritization for app deliveries. So wait time is a risk, and it needs to be baked into your formula for what types of trips you accept. And so that is a risk to definitely take into account. Another one that I've run into is how the staff treats you at a restaurant. Wendy's in Forest Lake in particular has treated me very poorly. But I have my own opinions on that one. They're going to be fairly controversial, so I'm going to avoid that here. But Wendy's, of course, has that stupid weigh scale that you have to weigh. They have to weigh their food on before they release the order to you. I thought they had already weighed the scale once. They didn't. She chewed me out, ripped me a new one up and down. That's the type of verbal abuse that a driver doesn't need. It's a risk that you just don't want to have, because the risk could be that you could wind up being deactivated over an unsavory encounter. Now, my solution for this unsavory encounter, of course, as I mentioned before, was to beat the restaurant to the story with DoorDash, which I did. I haven't heard about it since. And this was several weeks ago. So that's a risk that you also want to consider. How does the restaurant treat you? Because one unsavory reaction can get you deactivated. And so that alone is also a risk. I will link right along with Bree's channel. She's thinking about all of these things every time she makes a decision on these ride-along videos, whether or not to take or accept an order. She doesn't explain it to this detail, but I can tell she's thinking it. It's important. Risk analysis is the most important part of this gig. It is not delivering food. It is risk analysis. I will say it again over and over again in as many videos as I can. Your top job is risk analysis. It is not food delivery. You want to stay on the platform and you want to stay profitable. Those are your biggest risks that you face out there. So drive safe, folks. I'll see you on the next round. And as always, peace out, homies.